Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The morning sun bathed the skyscraper's glass-fronted offices, casting golden rays across the immaculate parquet floor. Alexander Whitmore, a man whose name alone evoked power and fortune, absent-mindedly adjusted his tie as he prepared for a series of interviews. As CEO of a global financial empire, his life had always been governed by numbers, contracts, and quick decisions. Yet this morning, something seemed different. A young woman with a look both nervous and determined entered his office. She clutched a file, but this was no ordinary candidate's posture. There was a dignity in her bearing that commanded attention. "Hello," Alexander said, shaking his hand. "I'm Alexander Whitmore. How may I help you?" She took a deep breath before answering. "Hello, Mr. Whitmore. My name is Emily Turner. I applied for the position of administrative assistant." Alexander smiled politely and invited her to sit down. The interview began routinely, questions about experience, skills, motivations. Yet, something about the young woman's face aroused a strange, almost familiar feeling. The minutes ticked by, and each of Emily's answers seemed to resonate more deeply than he would have expected. Then, Emily missed a detail, a discreet piece of jewelry hanging around her neck. Alexander paled slightly. This pendant, in the shape of a heart engraved with the initial W, was the one he had given to a woman from his past, a woman he had never known had a child. His heart raced. He sat up abruptly. "Emily, this pendant, where did you get it?" Silence fell in the office. Emily looked down, her cheeks slightly flushed. "It was my mother, she gave it to me before she died." Alexander felt the world shift around him. The pieces of his past, buried for years, were falling into place. He could no longer ignore it. The young woman sitting across from him was his daughter. In an instant, the mundane conversation turned into a shocking revelation, and Alexander knew his life would never be the same again. The morning sun filtered through the blinds in Alexander Whitmore's office, creating bands of light on the immaculate floor. For him, every morning felt like a copy and paste of the last: meetings, quick decisions, and constant control over every aspect of his financial empire. Yet that morning, an event would disrupt this routine. Emily Turner, a 24-year-old woman, entered his office for an interview. Her hands trembled slightly as she held a file. Her attire was simple but neat, and her gaze betrayed a rare determination. "Hello, Mr. Whitmore," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Emily Turner. Thank you for seeing me." Alexander smiled politely and gestured for her to sit down. He couldn't help but notice a subtle familiarity in her features, a slight air he hadn't yet known he knew. The interview began normally, questions about Emily's experience, skills, and motivation. Everything seemed standard, until Alexander spotted a pendant around Emily's neck. A small gold heart, engraved with the initial W. His heart skipped a beat. He recognized the pendant immediately. It was the one he had given to his beloved years ago. "Emily," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "This pendant, where did you get it?" Emily looked down, blushing. "It was a gift from my mother, before she left me." Time seemed to stand still for Alexander. Every word echoed like a piece of the past he had forgotten. A truth he had never considered was beginning to emerge. Emily, could she be his daughter? Seconds ticked by, heavy with silence. Alexander took a deep breath, trying to mask the overwhelming emotion. He knew his life had just changed, and that nothing would ever be the same again. After the interview, Alexander sat at his desk, Emily's pendant revolving in his mind like an obsessive mantra. Every detail of the encounter reminded him of forgotten fragments of his past, his late partner's smile, the unfulfilled promises, and most of all, the child he'd never known existed. He decided to conduct a discreet investigation. Nothing should arouse the suspicions of Emily or those around her. With the help of his personal assistant, Mark, he began gathering information on the young woman, her educational background, her professional experiences, and most importantly, her family. Meanwhile, Emily continued her day, oblivious to the inner turmoil she had unleashed. She simply dreamed of landing that job, hoping for financial stability after years of hard work and sacrifice. 2 days later, Alexander received a confidential report. Every detail matched eerily the story his partner had once told him: a pregnancy she had kept secret, a sudden move, and a last name change to protect the child. Everything matched. Doubt turned into icy certainty. Emily Turner was indeed his daughter. However, Alexander knew he couldn't rush into things. A direct confrontation would risk upsetting the young woman and shattering the fragile trust she had in him, even indirectly. So he decided to observe her from afar, to get to know her in her true light before revealing the truth. This decision marked the beginning of a new life for Alexander. He understood that from now on, his choices would no longer concern only his business and his empire, but also a life he had ignored for too long. And in Emily's heart, an unexpected future was waiting to take shape. Alexander watched Emily from afar, observing her interactions with her colleagues, noting her reactions, her kindness, her perseverance. Everything about her evoked childhood memories he thought were lost forever. Her light laugh, her sense of justice, her quiet determination, every detail was an echo of the past. One afternoon, Emily stayed late at the office to finish an important project. Alexander, alone in his office, felt a pang of admiration mixed with guilt. He remembered moments he'd never shared with his daughter, dreams he'd never protected. And now, here he was, watching a young woman he'd never known, but already loved deeply. That evening, Emily returned home, exhausted but proud of her work. She had no idea that the man who could change her life had already been watching her closely. The next day, Alexander made a bold decision. He invited Emily to a business dinner, pretending to discuss a long-term project. In the hushed silence of the specially transformed meeting room, he looked her straight in the eye, weighing every word. "Emily," he said softly, "there are things you don't know about me, and about your past." Emily looked at him, intrigued, sensing that this dinner wouldn't be like the others. "What do you mean, Mr. Whitmore?" Alexander took a deep breath. "I think you deserve to know the truth, a truth I haven't been able to share until now." Emily's heart began to beat faster. A strange intuition, like a whisper of fate, told her that this conversation would change her life. Alexander knew the time had come. He had to reveal to her what he had learned in silence, that Emily Turner was not just a job candidate, but his daughter, lost for too long. The impromptu dinner in the conference room was silent, lit only by the warm glow of a hanging lamp. Alexander watched Emily, her hands resting on her notebook, her gaze attentive but relaxed. Yet he knew this moment would change everything. "Emily," he began in a calm but firm voice, "there is something important I must tell you." Emily tilted her head slightly, curious and a little worried. "You deserve to know the truth about your past," he continued. "I've discovered something that could change your life as much as it has mine." He paused, working up the courage to say the words he had mentally rehearsed dozens of times. "Emily, I am your father." A deafening silence filled the room. The words hung between them, as if unreal, and Emily stepped back slightly, her eyes widening. What?" she stammered, unable to understand immediately. Alexander took a deep breath. "I know this is a lot to take in. Your mother never mentioned you to me. I only recently learned of your existence, and I wanted to make sure I was getting the truth before telling you." Emily's eyes filled with tears. Confused anger and a sense of betrayal mingled with profound astonishment. How could a man she had never known be her father? And why now, after all these years? "All I can do," Alexander said, "is be honest with you now. You're my daughter, Emily. And I'll do anything to make up for lost time, if you'll give me the chance." Emily looked away, trying to contain her emotions. Her heart was pounding, torn between anger, confusion, and an insane desire to believe this truth. I don't know what to say," she finally whispered. Alexander bowed his head slightly, respecting her silence. He knew the road would be long, that trust wouldn't be earned in an instant. But for the first time in years, he felt a spark of hope. The path to their reconciliation had just begun. The days following the revelation were a mixture of tension and curiosity for Emily. She struggled to come to terms with the idea that the man she had just met was not only her professional contact, but also her father. Every message, every call, every gesture seemed both strange and familiar. Alexander, for his part, respected her space. He didn't want to rush things, aware that the betrayal of lost time couldn't be repaired with a few conversations. He started with small gestures, sending her documents to support her in her work, inviting her to lunch to discuss professional projects, but always with that cautious distance, so as not to frighten her. One afternoon, Emily agreed to lunch at a small cafe near her office. The initial silence was heavy, but it was quickly broken by discussions about Emily's work and projects. Little by little, the walls she had erected around her heart began to crack. "You know," Emily said, playing with her spoon, "I don't know if I'll ever understand. Why now, after all these years?" Alexander nodded, his eyes filled with regret. "I can't change the past, Emily. But I can try to be present from now on. I want to get to know you. I really want to." Emily looked down, a mixture of emotion and confusion in her eyes. "What if I refuse?" she asked softly. "Then I will respect your decision," he replied sincerely. "But know that I will be here whether you like it or not, ready to make up for lost time when you are ready." This conversation was a turning point. For the first time since the revelation, Emily felt some of the anger and fear begin to fade. Confidence was not yet forthcoming, but a nascent, almost timid, curiosity was taking hold. That lunch marked the beginning of a fragile bond between them. A bond filled with caution, hesitation, but also hope. Alexander knew the road would be long and fraught with challenges, but he was determined not to let a second chance with his daughter slip away. Emily spent her days juggling her work and her thoughts. Every gesture, every word from Alexander left an imprint on her mind. She wanted to believe in this new reality, but a part of her resisted it. How could she accept that a man she had met only a few days earlier was actually her father? One evening, after a long day, Alexander invited her to his office to show her old family albums and documents, hoping to tell her the story she had never known. Emily accepted, driven by an irrepressible curiosity. "Emily," Alexander said, opening a dusty scrapbook, "your mother and I made some difficult choices, and I have many regrets. I think you deserve to know everything." The photos revealed happy smiles, travels, and intimate moments Emily never imagined. Then came a carefully preserved letter written by her mother shortly before her death. The words were filled with love and secrets never revealed, the hidden pregnancy, the fear of the future, and the hope that Emily would one day find her way back to her father. Emily felt her eyes fill with tears. She had always believed her mother had kept everything from her to protect her, but these words revealed a much more complex truth, a woman who loved deeply, but who had been forced to remain silent. Alexander, seeing her emotions, gently placed his hand on hers. "I can never replace the lost years, but I want to be there now. I want you to know that you are never alone." Emily felt a mixture of emotion and anger at the time lost, but also gratitude for this openness and sincerity. She understood that their bond, fragile and recent, would be shaped by difficult choices and shared moments, but that it existed now. That night, Emily returned home with a mixture of conflicting emotions, fear, hope, anger, and curiosity. The past had been revealed, but the future remained uncharted territory, filled with promise and challenge. As the weeks passed, Alexander and Emily began to establish a rhythm, slowly getting to know each other. Impromptu lunches turned into longer outings, walks in the park, shared coffees, and deep discussions about their dreams and fears. Each moment together revealed striking similarities, a sense of humor, intellectual curiosity, and a tenacity in the face of life's challenges. For Alexander, every laugh from Emily was a breath of fresh air, a reminder of the youth he had missed. For Emily, every subtle attention and advice from her father awakened a new feeling, a mixture of security and confusion. Yet the road ahead wasn't easy. The young woman still had to manage her own life, her colleagues who were unaware of her relationship with the CEO, and the fear of becoming attached to someone she had just discovered was family. One afternoon, Alexander invited Emily to a charity event at his company. She accepted, curious but nervous. During the evening, she watched her father interact with his colleagues and partners. She saw a powerful man, but also caring, fair, and generous. She began to understand that the man behind the title, Millionaire, had a human dimension she had never imagined. At the end of the evening, as they were driving home, Emily broke the silence. I'm beginning to understand that you're not just my father, but someone who could really support me. Alexander looked at her, a tender smile on his face. That's all I ask, Emily. Give me a chance to show you that we can build something, even after all these years. That evening, a first concrete step toward trust and complicity was taken. Their fragile but promising bond began to solidify. However, Alexander knew their relationship would never be easy. Lost years, unspoken words, and social expectations could test their fragile bond. But for the first time in a long time, he felt he had a real chance to repair the past. As Alexander and Emily's relationship began to strengthen, external tensions began to shake this fragile balance. Some colleagues, intrigued by the CEO's special attention to Emily, began to whisper in the hallways. Jealous glances and veiled innuendos circulated, making the professional atmosphere more difficult for her. One morning, Emily received an anonymous email. "Don't interfere in what doesn't concern you. You don't belong here." The message left Emily upset and worried. She turned to Alexander, who took the situation very seriously. "Emily," he said, "I knew this path wouldn't be easy. But you're not alone. I'll make sure no one hurts you here." Alexander used his contacts and authority to identify the sender. What he discovered shocked him. A business rival, jealous of his influence and success, was trying to sow confusion around Emily to destabilize him. This external threat forced Emily and Alexander to work together, strengthening their bond. Emily felt protected, but also empowered. She understood that their relationship was now public for some to see, and that their complicity could attract criticism or attack. Yet despite these obstacles, they found moments of respite. Alexander invited Emily to his office for informal chats, shared memories of his own youth, and taught her how to navigate the complex world of business and high society. Emily began to see her father not only as a protector, but as a mentor and ally. Their relationship, born of surprise and confusion, began to solidify in the face of early challenges. But Alexander knew this was only the beginning. Past secrets, rival ambitions, and social pressures would be constant challenges. And in the shadows, more revelations awaited, ready to shake their fragile bond once again. One morning, Emily arrived at the office with a sealed letter lying on her desk. The elegant, familiar calligraphy immediately intrigued her. She tore open the envelope and read the contents, her eyes widening as she read. "Emily, there are things your father hasn't told you yet. Before it's too late, you need to know the truth about our family. Search the safe in your mother's apartment, you'll find what's been hidden all these years." Emily's heart was pounding. She wasn't sure whether to be angry, scared, or curious. But something about the message aroused an overwhelming urgency. She decided to follow the instructions and immediately went to her mother's old apartment. There, in a metal safe carefully hidden behind a cabinet, she discovered a series of files and letters. Some were financial documents, others her mother's diaries. The revelations were astounding. Emily's mother had been forced to make decisions to protect her daughter and her father from powerful and influential enemies. Hidden affairs, threats, and even political manipulation had shaped Alexander's past and Emily's life without them realizing it. When Emily returned to the office, Alexander was there, waiting for her anxiously. She handed him the documents, her eyes shining with anger and tears. "Why didn't you tell me all this?" she asked, her voice trembling. Alexander took a deep breath. "I wanted to protect you, Emily. I didn't want you to get involved in things you couldn't handle. But I see now that you're ready to face the truth." This moment marked a turning point in their relationship. For the first time, Emily saw her father not only as a protector, but as someone willing to share the burdens of the past and trust her. The fragile bond that had been formed until then became stronger, forged in truth and resilience. However, this newfound acquaintance came with its own set of dangers. Past enemies and hidden secrets still threatened to upset their fragile balance, reminding Alexander and Emily that their reconciliation would be a path fraught with pitfalls and unforeseen challenges. The weeks following the discovery of the safe were intense. Emily and Alexander spent long hours sorting through documents, discussing past decisions, and understanding Emily's mother's difficult choices. Each revelation brought daughter and father closer together, strengthening a long-ignored bond. One evening, Alexander invited Emily into the private garden of his penthouse. The city lights twinkled in the distance, creating a calm and soothing atmosphere. "Emily," he said softly, "I know I missed so many years of your life. I can never get that time back, but I want you to know that I'm here now. And I'll stay here, no matter what." Emily, her eyes shining, felt for the first time a mixture of forgiveness and gratitude. "Dad, I think I need time to accept all this, but I want to try. I want us to be a family, now and for the future." Alexander smiled, moved. "So let's start, step by step. Together." In the days that followed, their bond grew naturally. Emily began attending some important meetings with her father, not as an employee, but as a partner and confidant. She discovered Alexander's human side, his humor, his doubts, and his deep capacity for love. Past enemies and office rumors persisted, but Emily and Alexander faced them side by side, their bond a powerful force. The story of separation and secrets transformed into a tale of reconciliation and renewal. Finally, one sunny afternoon, Alexander and Emily walked through the park where they had shared their first lunches together. Emily looked up at him. "Thanks for not giving up, Dad." "Never," he replied with a smile. "You're my daughter, and nothing can change that." For the first time in years, Alexander felt a deep sense of peace. The past had been difficult, but the future promised a genuine relationship, built on trust, love, and mutual understanding. A family reunited, finally complete.